Welcome to Minsmere, one of the UK's best nature reserves.
There's certainly plenty going on here, but tonight we've also got amazing wildlife stories from around the country.
Yolo brings us drama from a seabird skyscraper in Shetland.
Closer to home, something super slimy is stirring in your garden.
And our tawny owl chicks are ready to hatch in Cheshire.
Don't miss a second. It's Springwatch.
Yes, hello and welcome to Springwatch 2015, coming to you from the glorious RSPB Minsmere Reserve up here on the Suffolk coast. Look at it this evening. Gets better every night, sun going down, stark lighting, absolutely sensational. And our mission here, of course, is to bring you the very best of British wildlife. To do that, we've got 30 cameras, we've got thousands of miles of cable, enough to go 3 or 4 times around the world and all the way to the moon and back. That's a lie, but let's go straight to one of those live cameras. This one is set up to look over our grassland. And now you can see some red deer out there, one of them here chewing the cud by the looks of it, and that's necessary. We need these large grazing animals here to keep this grass short, to keep all of the bushes, the trees away, so it's an open, hot habitat for a great range of other species.
Now let's go also to the live scrape cam. And here is the avocet. This is a symbol of the RSPB, a fantastic conservation success story, feeding away down there. Now we've got a second camera down near the scrape on the fenland. And this is where we saw the redshank yesterday, if you were watching, with an adder coming into its nest. And we're going to explore that a little more later on in the programme. Bathed in light.
Well, those are some of the habitats that we've got live cameras on, but let's have a look at some of the nests that we've got live cameras on. Let's have a look, first of all, at the greenfinch nest. Now, this is in a scrubby, brambly area, and they're doing a lot of resting now, but, you know, I don't think they're going to stay with us much longer because they have been doing a lot of stretching, a lot of wing flapping, and I reckon we'll be saying goodbye to those greenfinches before the series finishes on Thursday. What do you reckon? That's my bet.
As well, yes. And you're going to be saying goodbye to me too now.
Oh, where are you off to?
I'm going off to be stung and bitten, probably. Anyway, I'll tell you how painful it is later. Bye.
Do have fun.
Couldn't wish it on anyone else, could you, really, to be quite honest with you? I think the greenfinches will almost certainly go in the next couple of days, but a couple of chicks that won't leave, for sure, are our barn owls. Let's go live to them now. There's the interior of their natural nest chamber. They're sheltering at the bottom, they're doing what they should do, conserve their energy. We're not seeing any food being brought in too much later in the evening, I have to say. There's one peeping out there now, but they're normally getting their first meal about 9:30, 10 o'clock, sometimes even later than that, to be honest with you. But you know, what you can't often appreciate is the subtlety of nature until scientists get to grips with it. And we've discovered a great new piece of science. Inside that barn owl nest, there's something going on called sibling negotiation. Sibling negotiation. They're negotiating who's going to get the food when the adult comes back before it arrives. Now take a look at this, but also listen to the behaviour of our 2 chicks and how it differs. The one on the left is hardly squawking at all. The one on the right is hissing frequently and loudly. And it's this that's the process of negotiation. The scientists have come up with the fact that the owl that makes the most frequent loud hisses is the one that gets the food when the adult comes back. The rest defer to it. Basically, a conversation has taken place and they've sort of thought, right, that's the one that's going to get the food this time. And also, best defend it, just in case there was a little scrap afterwards. Now, you might think, is it worth it making all that hissing sound when the adult's not there? Why not just grab it in advance? Well, that sort of conflict could be dangerous. It could be that you're slightly smaller, you might not get it. You might be not as close close to the food. So during the course of the day, these chicks will squawk about 1,800 times, using up a fair bit of energy to do so, but it's worthwhile because they agree who's going to get the meal, sometimes long before it arrives.
Actually, my brother and I used to do something similar. You know, if there's one chocolate bar left, we'd have a big argument about it. He'd usually be far more vocal than myself. I'd give up and he'd get the chocolate bar.
Did you then swallow it whole and regurgitate the wrapping as a pellet?
No, that's where the similarities between me and a barn owl actually finished, just with the sibling rivalry. But you know, we are worried about those 2 barn owl chicks because they haven't been fed properly, although I'm pleased to tell you they got 6 feeds last night.
6
3
between 2?
Each. Yeah, 3 each. I know it should be 4 at this stage.
Could be more.
But that's better than it's been the last couple of nights. But we are concerned because we're pretty sure there's only 1 adult feeding them. The second adult hasn't been seen for days, so that adult's got to work really hard to get those 2 chicks to fledge. Well, from one single parent family to what we presume is another, are Chetty's warblers. Now let's have a look at them live. Now, here, we can't see very much at the moment. They're snuggled down, but I say we presume it's a single mother. Well, that's because the males mate with up to 3 females, and although they may be around, our nest watchers haven't actually spotted the male. We've only seen the female come in and feed. Amazing to see them, though, because they only really came here in 1973. The recent colonists, well, that was when they first bred, wasn't it, Chris? And they came from southern Europe.
Yeah, they've been stretching all the way up through Europe. They started in the south of England. I saw my first one in Weymouth in the late 70s. And now they've come all the way up here. They like this wet fen habitat. But the question is, you know, how does a bird, you know, squeeze itself in when there are already lots of other species here? This is a small insectivorous bird. We've got plenty of others. We've got blackcaps, we've got reed warblers, we've got sedge warblers. How does the Chetties fit in? Well, one of the things that it has to do is find a unique diet, something that all of the other birds are possibly just avoiding slightly. Well, we've been able to watch these birds really closely, and our story developers have been able to identify precisely what they've been eating. Now, they do feed down in the wet fen area, so we expected to see quite a lot of things like this coming in. Damselflies. Sometimes they'll hop along the water's edge and find their food there. Look, 3 caterpillars, 2 damselflies, a pair, probably caught mating, so that was going out with a bang, quite literally. And here are a moth species that this adult bird has picked up. And then, lastly, some spiders. Quite a few spiders, actually. Now, that surprises me. I thought they'd be going for more things, fly-like things around the surface. And this one, we even identified to species level. It's a large clawed orb-web spider. So, great work being done by our story developers. And I've got to say, we've had a tweet, coincidentally. It's from Robert Quadling, and he says, "What's happened to Chris? Why no pie charts this year?" Well, Robert, in the nick of time, here we have a pie chart, and I'm very pleased that this has been done by our story developers, looking at the diet that they've seen our Chetty's warbler bringing in. Lots of spiders, as I said, nearly 25% over here. A few unknowns, but look at this. Lots of damselflies here, lots of beetles and caterpillars and flies too. So it's likely that although many of these other bird species will overlap with them, this particular species has got a feeding niche of its own. If it's not the species that's eating, it's where it's finding them, which is pretty neat, I would say.
Very good, very good. And aren't you speaking to someone on Unsprung later about that?
I am. I'm going to be talking to Brett, and later on, he's a naturalist here. He's been working on the morning programme with us. So one of our guests said he was the best all-round naturalist that he'd ever met, and frankly, I'd vote for that too.
I want to have a look at that in a minute, but also I think I want to hear your spring word.
The spring word,
you got one today?
Yeah, do you know, we had a few today, actually.
Yeah.
A few willy walls have been blowing through your hair. You've got a little bit of willy walling going on
willy
there
wall?
now. Do you know what the willy wall
Really?
is? Here's the spring word today. Willy wall is a sudden and violent gust of wind. Do you think you can get one of those in before the end of the programme, Michaela?
I reckon I can.
I think you
I shall
possibly
squeeze one out. Oh, well, maybe I won't squeeze one out, actually.
You'll squeeze one in?
Yes, I won't squeeze out a willy ball. But look, I wanted to look at this because, you know, I love a graph. Love a graph. But I particularly wanted to look at the damselflies because, you know what, Chris? We only really ever see things like damselflies and dragonflies on this series going into the beaks of birds. But if you look at them in slow motion, you can really appreciate that they're fascinating and beautiful creatures.
Here at Minsmere, dragonflies fill the air. Their wings seem to be made of the finest gauze. But in just 3 wing beats, a dragonfly can accelerate to 50 kilometers an hour. Each wing moves independently. They really are supreme flying machines. Their more delicate cousins, damselflies, are more gentle flyers. But what they lack in speed, they more than make up for in grace. Flitting from perch to perch.
Absolutely gorgeous things, damselflies. Rather this colour, actually. Now, yesterday we saw some very remarkable film down at our redshank nest because, believe it or not, an adder came into the nest. Here's the mother redshank. She leaves suddenly. She's obviously alerted by something. She's upset. And look at this. Watch those eggs. There's an adder going right over them. Look at her. She's coming back. She doesn't try and defend them. Extraordinary footage, the adder over the eggs. And that set us questions, raised lots and lots of questions in our minds. What was the adder doing down in the sort of reed beddy area? And then, of course, why didn't it eat those eggs? Well, eggs aren't generally on the adder's menu, but what do adders tend to eat? They're small mammal specialists generally. So they'll go for things like voles and mice. They'll bite them, inject venom, then they let them go and they'll follow them. They'll smell where they've gone as they slowly die, and then they'll eat them. They'll even have a go at lizards. But of course they will also eat chicks. They'll love a nice chick. But what they need to do, adders, is that an egg doesn't move at all. What they need is they need something to move, and that stimulates them to strike at it. If they don't move, like an egg doesn't move, they won't strike. And what was incredibly lucky was that that redshank nest, the eggs there, they didn't move, so the adder didn't strike. 2 hours later, the chicks started to come out. And if the adder had come in then, it probably would have got them. A very narrow squeak. What about our adders? Now, when I say our adders, what we managed to do was we managed to fit, I don't know if you can see that, a tiny little radio transmitter to 5 of the adders here at Minsmere, and that enabled us to track them. So here's one, you can see it with the transmitter attached, and with the help of the Suffolk Amphibian and Reptile Group, and Duncan in particular, here he is, we could literally track them and find out where they were moving to all around Minsmere. That's actually very close to where we are now, and I can tell you where we all are now is a kind of an adder hotbed. They're all around us here. We know that they're very close to us now because we've been able to track them. So what have we learned? Well, it's very interesting. Have a look at this. The red ones, all these red ones, these are the females, and they've hardly moved at all. In the last 2 weeks, they've stayed there. Now that's because when they come out of hibernation, adders don't move, they don't start hunting until they've shed their skin. Okay, and these females haven't shed their skin, so they're staying put. But look at the white ones here, all of these white ones. These are the males. They're careering all over the place. They do shed their skins early, and now they're hunting. And this, down the bottom, that's where we are now, right here near the reed beds. So what they're doing is they're coming around here, they're going around, and they'll even swim across there, and they'll go in, the males in particular, and they'll start hunting in those reed beds. That's a little bit scary because in the reed beds is the redshank nest. Let us go live to the redshank nest now. That does not look great. There's nothing in it at all. Oh dear. But actually, I'm teasing you. Because in fact, this happened earlier today. This was yesterday. Last night, very early in the morning actually, all 4 chicks came out. And here they are. And these are precocial chicks. And they will leave the nest almost immediately. As we've seen many of these waders do that. Off they go. Beautiful little fluffy. As soon as they're out the egg, they're ready, they're pecking, and off they go. But that red shank now, those chicks, they'll stay in all these tussocks here, and they will have to look out because after those female adders have shed their skin, they too will join in the hunt here, and the little chicks will have to be a bit careful. Now, people always think that snakes are kind of slimy. Well, if you handle them, they're not slimy at all. They're lovely and dry and smooth. But there is an animal that is particularly slimy.
In springtime, the garden is bursting with life. We rejoice in the sunshine and cast off the shackles of winter. But not every visitor is welcome. Under the cover of darkness, some of the most reviled garden creatures emerge from the soil. Every night, slugs commence a rampage which makes them the gardener's deadly enemy. But take a closer look, and these villains aren't as beastly as they first appear. In fact, they're rather super. Because whatever shape, size or colour, each one has a range of amazing abilities at their disposal. For a start, they're agile, incredibly so. Rippling with muscle, they expand and contract to move forwards. Like a stretchy superhero, a slug's gelatinous body can extend up to 20 times its normal length. Slugs glide around the garden effortlessly, and that's down to a magical solution: slime. Their true calling card, an extraordinary substance with viscoelastic properties. It acts as a glue that liquefies as a slug moves. Moving vertically is easy. They seem to defy gravity. On the ground, slime has a different role. It's a liquefied lubricant, a slippery carpet that takes friction out of the equation. Slugs can control the viscosity of their slime, which gives them one more special power. Like a miniature Spider-Man, they can abseil through the vegetable patch. This allows them to drop safely from staggering heights, suspended from a thread. Truly superglue. This extraordinary slime enables them to get around quickly, and that helps with their consuming passion: eating. They're munching machines, equipped with a specialised food processor known as a radula. It's a miniature conveyor belt covered with up to 27,000 tiny toothlets which relentlessly rasp and scrape food. It's so effective, slugs can consume their entire body weight in a single night. Times are good for these garden superheroes. Or are they? Danger lurks during their nightly adventures. Their nemesis, a slowworm. One of the few animals that can stomach a slug's defensive mucus. glowworms can eat as many as 30 slugs in a single night. It's a horror show for the molluscs, but there is a silver lining. Slugs are hermaphrodites, and every one has the ability to lay eggs. They do so prolifically. In any garden, at any time, an army of new super slugs is just waiting in the wings.
I know they're not everybody's favourite and I know they're slimy, but you've got to admit they're awesome. I mean, imagine being able to abseil using your own slime. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
I tried that once. It failed. It was a miserable exercise.
A horrible end.
It meant a horrible end, particularly no. Anyway, the point is, okay. Now, I very much enjoy the programme and everything about it and get in contact with wildlife, but I don't normally worry about any of the species that we show. I'm quite happy to let nature take its course, whatever happens. But I've got to confess, when I woke up this morning, the very first thing that flashed into my mind was, how is Spineless Simon? Has he been ottered? Is he still alive? He's really captured everyone's hearts. Let's see what he's been up to. He's been fanning. He's been fanning for England. And this is good news. It means that his eggs, or perhaps even his fry, are still developing down there. But not only has he been fanning, he's also been laying down spiggin, anal glue. Now you might think, why is he bothering to put anal glue on the nest now? It's all complete. Well, I think he's just making sure that the structure's sound. He's been making holes in that nest to improve the ventilation, as it were. And also, that spiggin has antimicrobial properties, so that's helping to protect those eggs or the young. But look at this, he's fanning away. Absolutely brilliant. We spoke to a guy, Ian Barber, at Leicester University. He's been giving us some advice about the sticklebacks here. He says that the best thing about Simon and his nest is that it's in the silt, which means there's not a flow of water there, so there's no natural flow. This is why he's doing so much more fanning. In fact, I've got a bar chart which shows how much fanning he's doing now compared here on the 1st of June. So this is how much time he's been fanning in half an hour. Here about 4.5 minutes. Look at him today, 16.5 minutes he's been doing that. 16.5 minutes. That's fanning, folks. Then do you know what? I think that probably at the moment there's not eggs in there at all. It was really warm. I think that Si is hiding fry. Let's go live to Si now to see if we can... He's there.
Oh, and he's gone. He's gone.
I was liking him so much until that moment.
Do you know, Chris, I've realised we've really missed a trick. Because you're saying you're really hoping we're going to see Si fry. Well, if we called him Spineless Stephen, by the end of the series we could have had Stephen's fry. OK, I think he's back. Should we just have a quick look at him back?
Is he back? He's not.
No,
he's
he's
gone
not.
again.
He's gone.
He's in, he's out. But one thing, he's definitely about and everyone is following his antics. And I'm fairly confident he's got fry in there. It's just a question whether it's warm enough to get them out in the next couple of days.
He's got plenty of fans and you're a fan of the fanning, aren't you? Let's be honest.
He's diligent.
You know, poor old Spineless Si, he has been naturally challenged while we've been watching him, but we've decided to artificially challenge some of the rodents here at Minsmere because there are lots of mice around here, and we were quite interested to see how they cope with this sort of watery reed bed world and how aquatically agile they are. So I reckon it's time for a recap of this. It's the Iron Mouse Challenge. This is how it started off. In the middle of a pool of water, we put some food. We baited the mice and we put a big log going into the middle. Well, of course, the mice got across that log very, very easily. No problem at all for the little mice. So, of course, we thought, needs to be a little bit harder. So we put some narrower logs across with little gaps in between. And again, not really a huge challenge for them. They manage that quite easily. Look at that one, gets a bit carried away and goes off the edge of the big middle log in the middle of the water there. So we decided to make it even harder, and this is what we call the pan pipe challenge. We put this rather obscure looking obstacle in the middle, thinking it would put them off. But oh no, they seem to get across it quite easily, although this one's pausing.
Yeah, this one's not quite a
well,
ninja.
oh, and then look at that, Chris. It goes in the water, has absolutely no problem swimming. Another one comes along, gets to the second pan pipe, and then hops across to the middle.
Made it look easy.
Very easy. And hops,
Oh,
nearly back down. We weren't going to stop there, of course. So last night we lowered some of the pipes into the water to make it even harder. Have a look what happened. Now here we go. You can see the first mouse is really struggling. And remember, it's dark.
Oh,
look, in the water it
he's in.
goes. It's dark. They're using those big eyes and their whiskers. And you can actually see here, look, it's stretching across. Use it. Oh, falls in again, swims to the side. Will any of them make it? Well, just watch this one. Again, stops a bit, jumps, goes down, up, down, like a little jack-in-a-box, and eventually makes it to the food in the middle. But what's remarkable is what it does now. Watch closely. It tries, it thinks, no, I can't be bothered. I'll just jump across. Let's just replay that a minute. I mean, this is absolutely astonishing. That jump is 76 centimetres. Now, if you scaled that up, that would be twice the length of Greg Rutherford's gold medal jump in 2012, which was 8.31. So that mouse is an absolute superhero. In fact, I think we have a winner. Here he is. This is our little winner of the Iron Mouse Challenge 2015, and we're going to name him Wooly. Why Wooly? Well, because he's an amazing little jumper. Oh, they're all coming out tonight, aren't they?
my mother used to say, never laugh at your own jokes. Right?
Oh.
But I don't think that's a very good idea in your case.
No one else will.
Because no one else will. No one else will. The thing is, Greg had a run-up. The mouse did it from a standing start.
I know, I mean, incredible, isn't it? But what it does show us is that's how they get around in the reed beds.
And he didn't mind swimming at all, of course. So there's probably a lot of mouse swimming going on here. Next year I fancy a little swimming pool with lanes in it like that for more Olympic tests. But I don't see, what do you call him? Jumper? Woolly. I don't see Woolly. I don't see Woolly touring Minsmere in an open-top bus, receiving copious applause. Do you know where I see him?
Where?
I see him in the beak of a tawny owl. Yes, because he's part of the food chain. That's what mice are here for, to be eaten by things which are more interesting. And so last night, if you were watching, we had our tawny owl diary. Dave Cully was up there looking at these birds day and night, well, night and night and night, and we were on the edge of our seats to see whether their 4 eggs would hatch.
It's early March in Cheshire. This small island, surrounded by the River Weaver, contains a small wood where a pair of tawny owls have set up home. Their nest site is unusual. It's a hollowed-out tree trunk that was created for them by wildlife enthusiast Dave Cully. Dave's been filming them 24/7 since the pair took up residence in early February. At the moment, the female is brooding 4 eggs, the last of which was laid 10 days after the first. It's early spring, so the other residents of Dave's garden are getting ready to start families of their own. The place is alive with activity. But the tawnies are ahead of the game. 27 days after the initial egg was laid, the first chick hatches. This is the moment that Dave's been waiting for.
It's an absolutely amazing feeling to see that first chick come out. It's like watching your child being born. The first feeds roughly about 10 hours after the chick has hatched. She will tear the meat up from the prey and she will swing ahead then, to and fro, gliding the meat across the chick's beak because they're blind at this stage. So she'll swing it past the chick's beak until they can feel the meat, and then I'll open it and she'll gently put it into the chick's mouth. It's a fantastic moment watching the first feed.
Over the next couple of days, the second and third egg hatch. But it's 3 more days before the 4th owlet finally appears. Though this meant more sleepless nights for Dave, the implications for the youngest chick are far more serious. It's 5 days younger than its eldest sibling, which means it has a lot of catching up to do. The female won't leave the chicks while they're this small and vulnerable, so it's up to the male to do all the hunting for his young family. The female does her best to keep him on track. She calls to attract him back to the nest. This time, he brings in a rat, a decent meal for her and the chicks. Tawny owls feed on a huge variety of prey. Slugs and worms, small mammals and songbirds like this robin.
They're a cute looking bird, and that's what people see of them. But down deep inside, they're a pretty aggressive bird of prey. It's a bit like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
The other birds in the garden are on constant alert. It's mid-April. 3 of the tawny chicks are just over 2 weeks old and are looking strong. But the youngest is still very small. A pecking order starts to develop. The eldest owlets push the youngster out of the way to get to the food first. Over the next couple of days, the situation takes a turn for the worse, as the oldest chick becomes increasingly aggressive to its smallest sibling.
It's not very nice actually watching this sort of behaviour. The little one now is being picked on and bullied by his elder siblings. And this little 4th chick is starting to get weak now.
By the morning of the 17th of April, after multiple attacks, the smallest chick looks weaker than ever. Will the mother intervene, or will she let this aggressive behaviour continue?
Absolutely amazing. What about that bit when the female owl is teasing the chick by stroking the meat across its bill? You only get that sort of observation using the technology and the hours that Dave's put in. That, I thought, was absolutely enthralling. You'd never otherwise have seen that. Fantastic. And do join us again tomorrow for another update from that tawny owl diary. Be interesting to see whether that young chick survives.
Now, there's a raptor here that we've hardly mentioned this series, and yet people come here specifically to see it, and it is the marsh harrier. It's a fabulous bird. This is the female. It has a distinctive cream crown. And then a little bit smaller than her is the male, and this is the male with those grey panels on its wings. And this is what you typically see them doing here. Flying around, it's called quartering, looking for their prey. They use their hearing. They're much more like owls by using that technique than other raptors. They spot something and then they'll dive down to retrieve it. Now, there are 9 nests here, 7 males, and that's because 2 of those males are polygamous, which means that they have more than 1 female. An amazing bird.
Yeah, and Minsmere really is the sort of home, if you like, of the UK's marsh harriers. They were ruthlessly persecuted, and by the 1870s they'd largely disappeared as a breeding bird in the UK. They came back, but then they were hit with the pesticide crisis and they went right the way down again. And in 1971 there was only 1 pair left in the country, and that was here at Minsmere. In this country, they go for this sort of reed bed habitat. They like fenland, but they nest in Phragmites. Well, I say this country, more in this sort of county and in East Anglia, because outside of that, where they're in Lincolnshire, they're in Lancashire, they're in southern Scotland now as well, they're beginning to spread. We've got about 400 pairs. They have started nesting in standing crops, which of course makes a lot more habitat available to them. So we should, if they're lucky, see them continuing to increase.
But what they have in their favour is they're real opportunistic feeders. So depending on what their habitat is, they can change their diet a little bit. But let's have a look at what the ones here are typically eating. Small birds, like this one. This is a reed warbler. Lots of small mammals, like the common shrew. It'll also take ducklings, that would be a good meal. And it'll quite happily take a young rabbit. But as I say, it's mainly small mammals, birds, insects, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they go for frogs. They go for whatever they can catch, which is good. But when they do catch it in springtime, particularly the males, well, that's when things get really exciting because they provision the females. They want to bring those females into good breeding condition, and that means making sure they put on enough weight to lay the eggs and then spend the time incubating. So they perform these extraordinary sky dances to impress the females, but then they also give them food. So they will pass this food to the females in flight. Look at this. This is one of them catching some prey. Beautifully backlit there. Down goes the bird. That was a female. Here's a male carrying what we think is a rat. You can see the long tail. It drops it on this occasion and the female catches it. Sometimes they'll almost sort of go out of control. They'll roll over upside down and the female will twist up like this and they'll pass the food directly, feet to feet. It's a spectacular display. And sometimes, as you mentioned, the males have more than one female. You might think, well, what's in it for the females? Because that's going to divide his hunting time, only going to get half as much food. But in fact, it doesn't work like that. In those pairs which are polygamous, either bigamous or with 3 females, each of the females gets more food than they would if they were with a monogamous male, just one male providing them. How can that be? Well, of course, they pick their males carefully, and the ones they tend to pick are the older males, which are far better hunters. So, in fact, it pays the females to have a mate which is looking after not just you, but other females too, because you get more food, even if there are 3 of you. What about that?
That is amazing, actually, because you wouldn't presume that. You'd presume they would get less.
Yeah, you would presume they get less, but it's a mark of fitness, and possibly early in the season when they're doing the displaying and handing all the food over, that's when the females would make a judgment over which male that they will breed with.
It's a fabulous bird, and I tell you, I've been really enjoying watching them here at Minsmere. Now I think it's time to catch up with Yolo, who's gone way up north to the Shetlands, and he is at an amazing seabird colony.
The North Shetland coastline has been sculpted by the mighty Atlantic Ocean. At this time of year, it's home to 100,000 nesting seabirds. One of the most successful is the gannet. With only a single precious chick to rear on these sheer cliff faces, a well-built nest is all important. These skillful flyers ride the updrafts, searching for the best nest-building materials. But the gannets aren't the only birds that breed here. Puffins return to the same nest sites on the softer ground at the top of these cliffs. And it's time for some home improvements. They take grass into their burrows to make a warm, safe nest for their pufflings. They're not much bigger than a blackbird, and so collecting tough grass can be a little tricky. After all that hard work, puffins can be quite protective of their burrows. But nest guarding is taken to a new level by their nightmare neighbours. Great skewers. They've set up home further back on the cliff top. On Shetland, they're known as bonxies. These formidable seabirds are famous for being feisty and aggressive. But all this conflict has a purpose. As the breeding season gets underway, they're staking claim to territory and breeding partners. But bonxies do have a gentler side. They're very attentive partners. Males will help the females get into top breeding condition by regurgitating food for them. All of these seabirds nest on different areas of the cliffs. But when it comes to finding food, there are no boundaries. Most seabirds have a diet of fish, but bonxies will eat anything they can get their beaks on. This has earned these avian predators a nickname, the Pirates of the Sky. Some bonxies here have even developed a taste for puffins. The bonxie might have size and strength on its side, but the puffin is quick and agile. And it has an underground bunker to retreat to. But not every puffin gets away safely. A bonxie has caught one and is drowning its prey. This meal will increase the bonxie's chances of raising a family. But for one pair of puffins, the breeding season is over before it even began.
But before we demonise the bonxie, think about this. In 1831, there were only 2 nesting pairs here in Hermanus because they'd been heavily persecuted by man. They were given protection and the population has slowly increased to what it is today, nearly 1,000 pairs. But remember, it's only a handful of those birds that kill and eat puffins. I think the success of the bonxie is something to be celebrated.
Another wonderful film from Yolo and the team on their epic journey north. Now, I'm enjoying my bed of nettles. Here they are. Now, nettles, generally you do see them in a bed like this, in an enormous sort of growth in all directions. Why is that? Well, nettles are a super competitor. Let's go down. And if you go down low, you can see it's dark, very dark down below. And that is because nettles, oh, this one's just broken, well done, Martin. If you look down the length of the stem, the leaves are arranged in such a way that no light, it catches all the light, and no light goes down to the bottom, so it overgrows all the other plants down below. So they're a brilliant competitor. Now, we're always saying to you, why, we should grow nettles, grow a patch of nettles in your garden. We're always banging on about it. Why? That is because nettles, and I urge you to look tomorrow, are teeming with life. Look at this here. See this leaf there? it's not dying, that leaf. It's actually got something inside, a caterpillar, and it's made a little silken home for itself, protected by that leaf. And everywhere you look here in the nettles, there are living creatures. And we've been filming the creatures from these nettles just today. You've got beetles, all sorts of little weevil, that's another beetle, it's a beautiful little thing. A click beetle, touch those and they fly into the air. Here's a scorpion fly, a magical thing. And then there are the butterflies that need nettles, they require them, they lay their eggs on them, the caterpillars eat them and they actually hatch out on them. The small tortoiseshell here, a red admiral, and classically a peacock butterfly. Okay, so here are all the creatures here, but down here is something utterly fascinating. Now, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that there are lots and lots of ants there, and they are tending the aphids on this stem? This is a fascinating story with new developments now. Let's see what's going on down there. Now, the ants tend those aphids. The aphids suck the plant's sap and then they release honeydew. Here it comes. And the ants love that, sugary honeydew, which they eat. Now, you're always told that the ants kind of look after the aphids, which they do, because if a predator like this, a ladybird which loves to eat aphids, here you go, here's one eating them, turns up, the ants will gather round and they'll try to drive it away. Watch this. They're going, what they'll do is they'll start to nip it on the legs with their powerful jaws, and in the end, that ladybird will clear off. There it goes, off. So it may look wonderful as if the ants are helping the aphids, but actually nothing could be further from the truth. Because what they've discovered, incredibly, some scientists at Imperial College, the ants' feet produce a chemical that tranquilizes the aphids and makes them stay in one place. They don't move around nearly so much because the ants are keeping them there. And if the aphids grow wings and try to fly away, sometimes the ants will bite those wings off. So those aphids are the ants' slaves, in fact. Fascinating stuff. Now, these are nettles. So nettles, of course, sting. How do they manage to do that? Have a look. Look at this. If you look really carefully at this stem, it almost looks as though it's sort of furry, but those aren't hairs. They're much more complex than that. Let's go really close into them. They're actually made of silica, glass, and they're like little hypodermic needles. What happens is that the tip will be snapped off, leaving the needle, and inside the toxins are under pressure. So you've only got to just brush against it, and those toxins will come out. Now, I'll just do a bit of brushing against it. What are those toxins? Where shall we do it? Here we go. Right. Yes, yes, I can feel those toxins. Right, that's histamine going into my hand, those little needles. Gosh, that's histamine's going in. That makes it itch and irritant. And also there's serotonin going in, which gives me tremendous pain. So what do you do when that happens? Of course, you get a dock leaf, don't you? Here's the dock leaf, and you rub it in, and it doesn't make any difference at all. Well, it does a bit, but there's no chemicals in the dock leaf. It's actually thought that by rubbing it, it spreads the toxins around in your skin. Ow! Right, back to Chris and Michaela.
What a nutter. Do you know that it's given me a new appreciation for nettles, because I've never been a fan of them up until now. Ever since I was a little girl, my mum said, go on, you need a quick wee, in the bushes you go. And yes, you've guessed it, it was in nettles. No, it wasn't good. It really wasn't good.
My mind just went somewhere I didn't want to go. So let's move on. Let's just move on immediately. Yeah.
Now, in the spring, Plant Life International launched a wildflower survey, and they asked you to vote for your favourite wildflower. Well, the votes came flooding in, and they closed at just 5 o'clock this afternoon. So we have the results. Would you like to give the runners-up?
Yes, these are amongst the runners-up. A fine spread of flowers indeed. The primrose, harbinger of spring. Beautiful when it emerges in our woodlands and hedge banks. Snowdrop, Generally comes out before that, a plant of economic value. People make pilgrimages to see these carpets every year. I'm pleased to say the cowslip seems to have made a comeback on our motorway verges. And poppies, well, you see them sometimes, sometimes you don't. Of course, they are an arable weed, so it depends on how tolerant the farmers are. And we finish off with these wooden enemies. They would be my favourite amongst that bunch. They come out early in the spring, not many leaves on the trees, and then you get these lovely little white stars glowing on the woodland floor. Beautiful.
Well, all those runners-up are absolutely beautiful wildflowers that should be appreciated, but of course, none of them were the winners. So, you have the winning
winner.
wildflower.
Thousands of people voted. No one's going to argue with the result. The winner of the most popular wildflower in Britain is the bluebell. Look at that. And it's not about the individual plant, I don't think, with this species. It's about this carpet, this ocean of blue, which spreads through woodlands across the UK. From the south to the north, these ignite the woodlands in springtime. And just standing there, sucking in all of the blueness, smelling the freshness of these flowers is a real treat. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they've won.
No,
Fantastic.
I mean, they are beautiful flowers, aren't they? But I'm very surprised, Chris, that daffodils weren't in there at all. I mean, they're one of my favourite flowers. I really enjoy them when you see them in the field. What was the word again?
Willy Warring.
Willy Warring.
Willy Warring. Willy Warring.
I got it in, Willy Warring.
OK, you've squeezed one in.
I got that. That was Chris's spring word of the day. You know, they're sort of going like this in the warm breeze. But you call them daffodils.
Yes, I did. No.
And I think that's what scuppered them being actually one of the runners-up.
Can I just say that the daffodils were those that these horrible cultivated varieties that you see for sale in garages. There is a native daffodil, and I was severely rebuked by some of our viewers. The native daffodil is a great plant. But bluebells have won it, and do join me for Unsprung tonight, online and on the red button. Immediately after this, I'm going to be speaking to Trevor Dine from Plant Life International, and we're going to be talking about my favourite plant, which sometimes isn't seen in the UK for 50 years. It's dormant, and then it comes back up. Can't wait for that.
Time for a reflective moment, because this week is Cherishing Churchyards Week. Basically, it's encouraging people to look after God's acre. So we sent Chris to a churchyard just a couple of miles away from here to really appreciate that evocative habitat.
I'm not a religious person at all. I've got to confess, I love churches, and I love churchyards too. As much as being about Christianity, for me, they're about community. So if I go to somewhere new, I always go to the churchyard to get a sense of that community. And what you get is not a snapshot of the community as it is now. This is a legacy of a community that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years.
This church was built in the 14th century. As these stones were being laid, Edward III was on the throne and we were beating the French at the Battle of Crécy. A lot has happened in the 700 years since then.
The shapes of the stones, their styles, the way that they've worn over the years, the fabric that they're made of, and of course the inscriptions on them, all give a sense of the people and the place. This is not a place where you need to be morbid or maudlin. This is a place which is bursting with life. Look at all of these wild flowers. Listen to the bird song. There are bugs and bees and butterflies everywhere. This is a place which is fueled by the ancient ecosystem of all of this community. It's absolutely beautiful.
For hundreds of years, churchyards have escaped the pressures of the outside world, and the wildlife has been left to thrive. Whilst the modern graves are carefully tended, the older ones are wilder, untamed. A natural veneration is at play here, where the cow parsley, the oxeye daisies become the graveside flowers, of ancestors long deceased.
Look at this old book. Belonged to my mum. She used to read it to me every Christmas. And she'd read me this poem, Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Gray. It's famed as being England's most popular poem. My favourite bits when I was a kid were the bits where it mentioned wildlife, of course. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels its droning flight, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. Save that from yonder ivy-mantled tower, the moping owl does to the moon complain, of such as wandering near her secret bower, molest her ancient solitary reign.
The historical, the personal significance of churchyards is just part of their intricate story. You see, these are not just places of remembrance and spiritual sanctuary. These are places of sanctuary for wildlife too.
I actually really love visiting graveyards, and you know, I visited one in southwest London once and spent ages watching a fox on sort of tripping over the graves.
Oh,
Very
lovely.
magical
Oh,
places,
lovely.
aren't they?
I'm just going to lower the tone a little bit. Chris, do you know what urtication is?
Go on.
It's a term for thrashing with nettles. And in the old days...
You've got a glove on.
I've got a glove on.
Honestly.
In the old days, if you had a pain, like I've got a sore knee, you used to thrash it with a nettle, urticate it, and that would get rid of the pain. Go on, give it a try.
Live urtication.
Live urtication.
On
Go on.
BBC Two.
I've got a painful knee. Oh, it's going straight into my jeans. That isn't my knee, mate. Okay, it's working.
I can't believe you did that. That was... Are you okay, Martin?
Yeah, it's
I'm
gone right
worried
through the
about your
knee.
welfare.
The whole
Yes.
point is,
Yeah.
it's not that it relieves the pain you've got
No.
there. It distracts you with another type of pain.
I am definitely distracted, Chris. Yes.
Excellent.
Thank
Right,
you.
that's just about all we've got time for tonight. Coming up on Sprung, Brett Westwood, that fabulous naturalist, and also, of course, Trevor Dine from Plant Life, and this, our mystery object. Look at that. Where did this come from, and what is it? You can find out by joining us online and on the red button coming up soon.
That Brett Westwood is going to be a busy man because he is back tomorrow for the breakfast show, which you can also watch online and on the red. You sat on one. Honestly, what do you like? But what have we got coming up on our show? Well, as usual, it'll be a busy show. We'll continue to follow the story of our tawny owls in Cheshire.
We've got the urban birder, David Lindo, is going to take us on a dawn chorus walk in the city.
And we'll spine the sigh. Have fry. Look at him fanning. What a guy.
Honestly, what's happened to you two? You've gone completely...
Really?
I thought it was a nettle that you'd sat on, and you're urticating or whatever it's called all over the place. What are they like? Hopefully they'll be a little bit more together tomorrow when we will be back for more fabulous wildlife here at Minsmere. We'll see you at 8 o'clock, BBC Two. Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.
Mad.